What's up, man?
Hey, AJ. Love your stuff, by the way. So today I was just watching interview Alex O'Connor dropped with the guy from Esoterica, and they were basically just talking about the kind of historical development of Judaism and Christianity. So they kind of went into how Yahweh was like the thunder god and a god amongst many, then went into monotheism. They then went into Christianity and how there were multiple like Jesus-like figures from Galilee. And they then went into Gnosticism and how Gnosticism seemed to be, you know, one of the big contenders against Christianity in Europe. And they had an interesting part about how Orthodoxy won out. And so I was just wondering how does the church kind of take the academic view of like the anthropology of the religion? How do you guys like reconcile it? Because they seem to insinuate in the interview that it's a bit of like a post hoc rationalization. So they'd say that like Christianity would like look back at the past and then kind of make it fit Christianity. But from listening to you, I don't get that sense. I get the sense that it's much more holistic and that
Right. We accept the narrative as is given in divine revelation, that the original religion was not animism and then polytheism and then monotheism. That's the typical comparative religion scholars account of how mankind progressed. We think that it was Trinitarian theology that devolved into paganism and polytheism. So all of the world religions are deviations from a primeval, you could say, Trinitarian theology. So it's the opposite of what they think.
You know what? I like that point. I was listening to Rachel and she was making this point, and then my friend Ryan and I were talking about this. The reason why these people come to these conclusions is we're taught in school, like we're moderns, we work backwards through history. Mm-hmm. We start from our presuppositions now with our lenses, and then we go back and reread through history when actually we should be doing the opposite. We should be starting from the beginning, trying to throw out as many presuppositions as possible, and then trying to get into the spirit and ethos of, wait, what was it these people were thinking? So we're doing it all backwards. Now, I try to do this in schooling by like, let's start with the pre-Socratics and work. But I was just thinking about, when you mentioned that, why do in these religious departments, why do they come up with this? Mm-hmm. Because they've been conditioned to work backwards, that my presuppositions from here, I will read back in through history. And then that's where you get all these problems. Well, you see, if I do that, then Christianity evolved out of this and this. But if you start from the beginning without that, those precepts, it's very clear what the story is.
And for example, if you see the video I did, the Hebrew Trinity or the Jewish Trinity, you'll note that that's my opening statement to Daniel Hakikachu in our Muslim debate. The whole point of that opening statement is to refute Daniel's idea that Old Testament Jewish theology was generic Unitarianism, therefore Islam is in continuity with generic Unitarianism. That all falls apart if the Hebraic revelation is Trinitarian.
Okay, understood.
And that was the whole opening statement.
Absolutely. Because monotheism doesn't even come, the word and term and idea doesn't even come about until the 17th.
It's a really late, monotheism as a term is really late, and Dr. Bo Branson has shown that.
Yeah, they mentioned in a part of the interview that they go into some really interesting bits. Like they mentioned that they found a temple that was like a proto-Christian temple that had cannabinoid resin in some of like the cracks of the brick. And so they were linking, proto-Christianity to shamanic rituals and things like that. There was also a mention of how when they first introduced Yahweh as the only monotheistic God, that when they introduced Yahweh as the only monotheistic God, that they also like credited him with evil, and then that created the necessity for Satan. And so Satan only came about because, that put them in a theological kind of corner, saying that, this God was responsible for everything good and evil. And so...
Yeah, exactly. That's just kind of the standard academic account of, comparative religion. But if you challenge the presuppositions as to why they think that, most comparative religion scholars are not fluent in epistemology or logic, and they would crumble pretty quick.